Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and today marks the 50th anniversary of a little show called Star Trek. September 8th, 1966, the first episode, The Man Trap, aired. It was a Thursday at 8:30 p.m., and the world was never the same again. I know my life was certainly influenced by it and touched by it many a time over in many of its various incarnations, the 5 different TV series, the film saga, and everything like that. And it's something that touched the world over. It's something that has influenced people's lives and the careers they would aspire toward, whether engineering, medical, scientific, all kinds of different things, and very much propelled by leaps and bounds as so much warp speed. Our technological prowess and things that exist today were only dreamt of back then, from communicative TVs, talking online, mobile devices, and all these kinds of things. Even science experiments on a quantum level, teleporting particles, which is something that's happening today. I mean, it's just astounding. Even the most fervent, non-fan of Star Trek has to at least agree that this show has been influential, for better or worse, depending on whether they're a fan or not. And I am a certified Trekkie, wholeheartedly. It's something that was passed down to me by my dad, and something I've subsequently passed down to my little sister. She is a full-fledged Trekkie as well. And I thought, to commemorate this 50th anniversary, this half a century of this just powerhouse franchise, I would relate some fond memories, looking back on my own personal encounters with the series, starting with the first, which I was, probably somewhere between the ages of 3 and 6 years old. I was in New Jersey, in my parents' house, and I remember walking into the living room. My dad was a self-taught electrician. He became vice president of an electrical outfit, and so he would bring home various different, forms of technology. In this one particular instance, he brought home one of the first home computers with computer games on it and everything like that, and he had to, outfit it for a client. And I just remember walking in and being sort of wowed by this. And in the background, on the TV, of all things, was an original series episode of Star Trek. I don't remember if it was on VHS or if it was something that was playing on TV, because he would go on to collect VHS tapes of various episodes from the classic series. But I just remember thinking back on that years later, how interesting that was. The correlation between Star Trek, something that propelled the imagination, propelled technology, and here was my dad, a self-taught electrician, working on a computer, and those two images have been seared in my brain ever since, because it was like being very personally touched by that technological advent that Star Trek really brought forth and really put into the minds of so many people. And it's a very fond memory for that reason. Subsequently, when the Next Generation series began, I had a funny run-in with my dad where it was the 25th anniversary of Star Trek, and he was all beaming and proud that he had managed to find a 25th anniversary Star Trek poster, which is actually on my wall as I speak. I still have it to this day, but originally it was his, and he had gotten me a Star Trek The Next Generation cast poster. And he kind of offhandedly said, look, TOS is mine, Next Gen is yours. I guess he thought I wouldn't really be able to get into the original series, which subsequently would go on to be my favorite of all of the Star Trek TV series. The original series, I own all 3 seasons on DVD. I've watched all the episodes with my sis at least half a dozen times thus far, and we will probably watch them many times in the future. The cast, the stories, not all of them, were gangbusters. Some of them were a little goofy. Some of them could get a little annoying, especially the ones with the kids in the cast. But I mean, the series is much beloved in this household, and that's why I still have that 25th anniversary poster on my wall, even though my dad thought it wasn't something I would get into as much as Next Gen, which was a different beast entirely, but still very much Star Trek, and also boasted its, better cast, if you will, than most series on TV. And talking about my sister, one of my fondest memories is actually twofold. Back when the first Next Gen movie, First Contact, came out, that is to say, Generations is technically the first Next Generation movie, but because it had, cast members from the original series and the original series movies carrying over into the Next Gen, I kind of consider it like a conglomerate movie, a mashup movie, whereas the first strictly next-gen casted film was First Contact, and both First Contact and Insurrection my sister and I saw during the holidays. I think First Contact came out around November, around Thanksgiving, which is basically my sister's birthday, and then Insurrection, I believe, came out a little closer to my birthday in December. And so it's something very fondly, reminiscent to me, because this was around the turning point for my sister getting into Star Trek. Very much as you hear kids in the 60s were being made fun of and called nerds and geeks and all these things in a derogatory. And so they took on the name Trekkie to kind of say, this is the thing we're into. She didn't really get Star Trek from right off the bat, and it would take watching some Voyager episodes at the time, which were first aired, and I would watch, every week. I didn't watch the entire series, but whenever she would join me in watching the episodes, she would usually enjoy them, and those were the first experiences where she wanted to go see the films with me and share that experience, and it was really the turning point for her, my passing on the baton, if you will, as my dad had with me and his love of Star Trek onto her. And when Enterprise came out subsequently, I fell in love with the series Enterprise from the get-go because Scott Bakula, who I loved in Quantum Leap, was going to be the captain, and I loved the prequel idea going back to a much closer time in Earth's history. So it didn't feel as far removed as some of the other series as far as something to aspire toward, whether going and exploring space or just humanity being that much better, that much more accepting of diversity and all these kinds of things. Even though toward the end of the series they did deal with some xenophobia and things like that, and that stuff would still exist in the Star Trek universe per Enterprise wrapping itself up. But for the most part, it was leaps and bounds, very much in the same vein as the 60s original series, as far as being inspiring, being something to give, people something to aspire toward, a better future that wasn't that far off, that wasn't that far-reaching. And I loved that series for that. And the final memory I'll kind of relate to do with that is actually Hallmark had put out a pewter NX-01 Enterprise ornament, and this is something I desperately wanted. Loving the series, loving the design of the NX-01, I went to somewhere between 4 and 6 different Hallmark stores across 3 towns, driving all over the place, wasting gas to find this sucker, and none but the last one actually had one left. And the irony was, the Hallmark that had the NX-01 ornament was the one that was just half a mile down the road from where I'm living. I went all different, to all different locations, all across 3 different towns, and then just about to give up, just to shrug it off, I was like, okay, well, there's one right down the road. I guess I'll go there. And sure enough, that's the one that ended up having one final pewter NX-01 ornament. I drove my sis crazy. I drove my mom's fiance at the time crazy, just trying to seek this thing out. And I finally found one, and it was right down the road after wasting so much time and effort and hours running around towns. And it's just because of how influential Star Trek has been for me, how much of a positive beacon of hope and an adventurous, line of stories and adventures and all that kind of stuff. Just brilliant casting, brilliant acting, very much a lot of speculative science fiction ideas and concepts, but also things that have propelled real science and real technology in our real world. And I don't know what my life would be like without it, at this point. And so I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below on this 50th anniversary of Star Trek. Share some memories of your own, whether you're a fan of the series, big time, a Trekkie or a Trekker, or you only have a passing familiarity with it. Share some thoughts and memories on this 50th anniversary that you'd like to impart. And I'd love to hear from you. Love it or hate it. Anything goes in the comments below. Just love having that conversation. And so, yeah, otherwise, that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well. Live long and prosper.